It's time to awaken and remember who you really are. It's time to live a life that you absolutely love. And it is time for the awakened being. Conversations to create change. Having real, transparent conversations that will change your world. And together, we can change the world. Hello, my loves. It is Sundari, aka Marcy Locke Mentor, and today on the Awakened Being Conversations to Create Change, I'm so excited. I have a dear brother and such a light being, Jared Granthem, who joined me for a conversation around the model of wholeness and activation codes. What I mean by codes, how do we activate our DNA and all those things within us to literally be liberated and more free and joyous and prosperous and all those things. Well, we're diving into that. Know that you can also go to marcylocke.com and get the Ultimate Life of Having It All meditation for free. That's just to support you. You can also tune in to the Best Life Tribe, my absolute highest recommendation, filled with a ton of trainings and all the support, etc. Check out if there's a coaching that will support you in something that you're dealing with in your life, or a specific meditation or activation, because together, my friends, we are all here to rise in love. So excited to share this with you and to be with you on the journey. Now we are officially started on both the show, The Awakened Being, Conversations to Create Change. And we are also, for those of you that are listening audio-wise, we are also on Facebook Live as well as Instagram Live.
We have every base covered.
Yeah, we just shared
and
with all.
the Temple of Wholeness.
Oh, and we are in the Temple of Wholeness, which if you just caught some of Jared's stories that he just shot as I was walking them through the gorgeous grounds of the temple. It's, really dope, amazing, beautiful
Since
space.
I've actually walked in, I've had this, my nervous system is, elevating the whole time. I'm
Right.
just like, whoa.
Right.
So we had to ground just in that second, just be present and here.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm receiving the frequency upgrades.
Yeah, I told him, I was like, you guys should just come to the temple because there's codes here for you to recognize. And we have the gorgeous Abby in the background. She's chilling out in recuperation mode. So she might throw in some questions or some shares or whatever. So you might hear the gorgeous Abby behind us over here. So yeah. So, I mean, I'll just set the context to why we got to create a little mini, we want to have a deep dive drop in.
Yes.
And you guys are headed back to Australia in a day.
Yep.
I just got back into San Diego 2 days ago. I was in Australia.
You got out kind of very normal.
Yeah, I was in your home. Yeah, technically my home is wherever I'm at. Since I'm doing a global citizen journey, yet we know that my special home base that used to be was here in Encinitas in San Diego. So
of course, yes.
It was so cool for you guys to be here. And we're like, oh, we'll just cross paths. And we actually just all got to spend time in Bali together for just a couple hours.
First catch up.
Right.
And what's interesting about that catch up is we'd planned 3 other times to catch up and it didn't align, it didn't flow.
Yeah.
But the 4-hour catch up we had was so perfect.
And I can't believe it was 4 hours.
And
it was
clean, it was just
we were a whole other dimension.
Yeah. Kind of locked us into place of oh yeah. So
yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Right. And I remember Jared being he's sitting there and he's breathing and he's like, my body's a little activated. I'm kind of activated being around you. And I was like, yeah, that happens. It happens. So
it was a deep remembrance, yeah.
And this is what's so beautiful about it. I mean, there's so many things that we could share. We could go, this could go any direction. And this is why we love to just hit record and share what's coming through.
How it needs to.
Yeah. And as we were just talking about, obviously you coming into the space and going, whoa, right when you walked in, you were like, whoa. You feel
this lifting up energy.
You feel this elevation of frequency.
Exactly right.
That you're like, whoa, what is that? And I noticed that I get asked a lot of times because one of the new language that's come through my system is me being, in my gene keys, I'm the future human. So it's I'm always, all of a sudden this new language is coming through. People are like, what is she saying? I don't know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know what she's saying, but I feel it in my body.
That is actually truth. I think we spoke about this last time we connected. We're talking about how there's the thing about, should I speak in a more relatable context so people can understand more? And it's it's not even about that. It's about them feeling the frequency of what you're saying.
And I also I align to that. Who's going to bring that frequency in? It's this is part of my role, is that I'm here to bring in the new code so that the highly evolved being, or us as the new earth and the new human that is literally there, has a context of how to operate. right? So until we start to speak the language, it's like if we didn't speak the language of love, everyone would still just be operating from a language of what we've been raised in, which is the language of separation and judgment and fear and all those things. And so when we start to speak, like acceptance and love and understanding and, honoring and wholeness, we become a model, an example and a model for someone to have that internal representation. And it was actually, I was updating with my sweet mama last night because, I was in Australia. I had like the 3 events that I chose in on, and I was in ceremony last night since I got here. It's like breathwork ceremony. And I was like, I better update with my mom because I have my event next week and so many fun things. And I was, talking to her about my experience in Australia and how I was called to do these service events and then just what happened. And I was sharing with you and Abby just before about what came through and this activation, these new codes that were coming through me and I was channeling this activation. And my mom said, what exactly do you mean by codes? and I was like, and so I what I shared with her, and we'll just bring some context to everyone, is that I'm like, it's like if you have a formula, but it's missing a little piece, right? Exactly. And so all of a sudden when someone gives you that piece of understanding or that piece of the formula or a recipe, all of a sudden you have the big picture and you go, oh. So same thing I want people to understand. And I actually said this when I tuned into the events. What I got from the highest divine source code was that it was like every single person there will receive the codes they require for their healing, for their remembrance, if they allow it. And so it's like, it's available. It's a matter of you choose to be willing to accept it.
Yeah.
And so it's like when you all of a sudden have a context of understanding, you have an internal representation to something, then
you're open to it.
Now you see the possibilities of it. Where before, when you didn't even have it in your realm of consciousness, it's like if you're only raised in an abusive environment and where there's lack and scarcity and fear, we're talking about the Frequency Alliance key codes, right? Which you're now wearing.
Exactly.
Abby's now wearing. These are from my other company where it's giving you divine frequency. And it's like all of a sudden you have if you experience being around someone, so someone all of a sudden is experiencing being around you and Abby, and they're like, whoa, the way they talk, the way they operate, how they treat people, it's like, oh my God, I feel this energy coming from them. And now they go, oh, I have context to life can be that way. Exactly. I can experience it that way.
We teach them through embodiment.
Right.
And I think one thing that I've experienced, the whole idea or the concept of codes was brought into my awareness from actually you and Azria, the first 2 people that I heard say it. And I'm like, okay. And I just kept listening to you guys speak about it and it started to sink in more.
Yeah.
And what I've related it to is it's like taking things from the mind or logic into embodiment.
Yep.
And what I've experienced is when someone is saying it's the codes, it's that moment when what what has been said to you so many times, or as an example, like the thing around being worthy.
Yep.
We can tell each other that you are worthy, I am worthy. But then when you have a divine, it's when something really comes into the body and you feel that frequency of I am worthy is a complete different experience of someone saying you are worthy. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it brings it into embodiment faster. And it's like, it feels like a click into place. Yeah. You're like, oh. Yeah. It's like an embodied
It's like I get it. Well, and the thing is, I find there's different layers to it. Because it's interesting, I'll get people that will message me that are like either in my programs or they're like, I've heard you say over and over what's coming through you. And I never understood it. And then they have an experience and they go, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
And even though myself, I personally have taught for the longest time, like self-love and all these specific things like integrity, embodiment, it's like, I've had different layers and levels of whoa, I just embody that at a whole nother degree. That now I'm in that. And the thing that I want to bring a little understanding to that you mentioned was it's actually when we take out logic. Because the thing is everyone's trying to figure it out with their brain. But what you brought context to is that you get to feel it in your body. And because when they're we want to have logic around something. And so when people are trying to wrap their brains around it, I really feel like that's just something that fucks everybody over.
Exactly.
Because there is no such thing as logic. Logic doesn't exist. Because if we go out of logic, we go 1 + 1 is 3. Or 1, sorry. That's not... See, that's why it doesn't work. 1 + 1 is 2 in logic form, right?
Yeah.
In our understanding... No, because 1 + 1 can never equal 2 because there's always the interdependence energy of the 1 + 1, which is 3, not to mention your interdependent. So it's all logical formulas and terms don't exist based on the perception you're looking for. So if someone's looking for something based on out of their logic, out of their truth, they find it.
Exactly.
Someone else can have a completely different understanding and they find a different logic. And so logic, literally, it's all a mental mind fuck. It's just a Mayan illusion. It's a mental masturbation program that just keeps you in something that's disconnected. Exactly. And so actually, there's something to it in that, yes, when we can receive some information so that people go, okay, I can kind of get that. Yet it's like you said, that when they continue to, when we just open up and go, okay, I don't have to understand it. Let's actually take out logic and go, because someone that's just had an abusive, horrible, hard life, you see how they're like, but no, but I can't, but this, me, da, 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 da. And it's like, until they're willing to go, okay, wait, drop all that trying to wrap your head around how it works and how you understand it.
Exactly.
Can I now actually just see an internal representation of someone who is showing the possibility of it? And when the possibility exists of it, I can now see like a context, or I have an understanding that, oh, that can exist. So now I have, and as I embrace that, I receive the code that exists. And when you like being around someone else, you're like, whoa, I feel that frequency. I feel how you operate. This is why it's like we're all such beautiful divine gifts for each other.
100%.
You know, being here with Amber, who also runs a temple, she is like the most sensual being. My sensuality codes went through the roof last time I was here. And then it's...
I look forward to meeting in it.
Right. It's like, it's just because we're all so juicy in love. Like we just, and the more that came through for me, the more I was like, every breath is juicy, like life is juicy. And I was like, whoa, someone can live in like that much juiciness of life.
Yeah.
And I remember being with my friend in Australia where she has this gift for making everything, like every meal was sacred, and she made it so beautiful and like such an experience. I was like, I couldn't go back to being like, let me just throw some food together. I was like, it's all like, oh, I have this code now where I just see this beauty in it.
That's something that I intentionally do as well myself. It's like when you're making food, it's not just about it being healthy or nourishing for the vessel. It's about the intention and like breathing with the food and connecting to it the entire time.
Right.
You can shift the frequency. But something I want to come back to that you touched on, and I want to sort of add a little bit of a bridge to it as well. You were speaking to basically people receiving the codes based on the embodiment of somebody else.
Yep.
So you're the embodiment of the wealth frequencies and so many other things.
Yep.
And people receive that by being in your vortex, in your environment.
We just walked into that bathroom and you guys were like, whoa. And I was like, luxury codes.
Exactly. And what's interesting about that as well is I know parts of your story.
Yeah.
And for people to find a place of resonance and seeing that your story wasn't always, you didn't always embody the wealth codes.
Because otherwise they're like, oh yeah, whatever, you got the money.
You were born that way, you're from your parents, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's our ability as leaders to be able to tell our story so that people can connect to it. Now yours was as a waitress making $2 an hour.
Yeah. You grew up on a farm, had to grow our own food to survive. I was pushing lawnmowers at 6 years old and going and dusting in houses just to buy my own clothes at 6 years old.
Exactly. And this is the power of sharing your story. So like I frequently share my story about how I've been through PTSD and severe panic disorder. And now I'm experiencing the complete polar opposite of that.
You're so zen as fuck.
It took a lot of work, but people need the reference point to go, okay, if he was there 4 years ago and now he's there, that means that's possible. Yep. All of a sudden, that little bit of belief makes them go, maybe I can too. Yeah. And as soon as they go, maybe I can too, all of a sudden their story starts to shift. It goes from, but you don't understand to, but he did it. Yeah. Maybe I can too.
Exactly.
And especially if the person that is facilitating or that you're looking to is grounded and humble, and it's like, I can show you.
Of course you can too, right? That's the thing. It's like, it's all a choice, and we get to honor every single person, their choice, but it's like every single one of us, when we come from the space where we know, like, I mean, I see every single person in my space as an equal and greater, you know, in a way that it's like, there's no, even if to ourselves we said, oh yeah, when we shamed who we were in the past, there's still an energy of shame. Exactly. So it's like, and I actually caught this, and I want to go back to also, I'm remembering.
We might be 2 hours, guys.
Oh my God. Yeah. I want to go back to time. Will you remind us, Abby, to go back to, there's no such thing as time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you were like, you know, when even the 4-year difference and the opportunity people have when the more they do lean in, how fast that can shift. Yeah. What it brings up is.
Yes, of course. Yeah. I know you're right.
Yeah. And what it brings up though is that, what was I just saying, Abby? Where did I go?
Okay, so what we were just discussing before is how it's such a common thing in the self-development sort of spiritual community to experience an up-leveling through so much pain.
Yeah.
Through suffering. Whereas with the frequency of codes, when you're with a facilitator that's embodied, you can get there faster. Okay,
I remember. Yeah? Thank you. Cool. Okay, so noticing even when people judge or shame themselves for like, okay, I'm at this point now. And so what happens? We hit triggers and their same old shit comes up and people judge and shame that. It's like, oh, I thought I dealt with this shit. I thought I healed this. And actually your core wounds and the patterns, behaviors you created based around those core wounds will always, I always tell people, it's just the thing that makes you pay attention. You go, oh, all of a sudden you want to self-sabotage with food again. It's like, interesting. Like, I haven't done that for a really long time. And when you go, oh, interesting, like what else is it bringing up and allowing me to see within me gets to be healed? And I'll share a quick understanding around this. Is I remember when I had a beautiful recognition of, because we call in twin flames as our soul reflections of everything we get to heal and love. That's why if you're experiencing any type of twin flame relationship, it's like,
it's really intense.
And then we align to soul companionship in our soulmates and in our divine besties and allies, where we're just like, we're all bliss and flow and peace and ease and grace. And I remember having this divine awakening for myself as to where I recognized that when I was having someone experience scarcity, and because I've built up wealth codes, right, and I've aligned to this place, that there was almost like there was a little bit of separation, almost like, of course, if a client is investing in me, I'm all in on like assisting and sharing them. And yet I noticed there was like this story or judgment around like, oh, that must mean they're not trusting themselves enough. It must mean they don't love themselves enough. Because I always share that like making money is as easy as breathing air. Money is as effortless as breathing.
But just allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to believe that is the first step. Giving yourself permission to believe that.
Most people would go, what the fuck?
Exactly. And that's the actual moment you get to go, what if I gave myself permission to believe that?
Yeah.
That's the inception of the idea, to open up the space to then be able to attract
and
more.
This is how we get to break it down to being a piece at a time to understand how it is. So I'll share this, how I realized. I was like, oh, no wonder I still feel resistance to this person because they're not standing in full power of themselves or owning up in, their wealth. I was like, oh, so what within me still gets to be healed and loved around scarcity? And I recognized that I had a story that when I was in scarcity, or that scarcity meant that I must not trust myself and must not love myself enough. Because again, as I was saying, that if money is a reflection, as all things are a reflection, as and I always say, money is as easy as breathing air. So it's a matter of how much value am I creating for the world and how much do I love myself? Because we know there's a lot of people out there in the world that are they're like beautiful, valuable creators. Like they have such gifts, but they're in scarcity.
They don't value themselves as well.
Because there's not the understanding of like, I value my energy, my knowledge, my information, and I create that value exchange. And so then if I'm in that place where I honor myself to create that value exchange, then it's a matter of, well, how many people am I affecting? How much value am I creating? Look at the hearts going like nutty. We love you guys. I value myself so much.
I love you.
Yeah, that how much value I now give to the world reflects how much abundance I'm receiving. So money's always just a reflection of how much value I'm giving to the world and how much I love myself. So with those associations, I noticed that I had this kind of feeling towards someone that was like in a relationship in my life being like, oh, you know what? Like, I don't want to feel their scarcity. Right? And I was like, interesting. The moment we create resistance or separation, we're in contraction energy. The moment I go into contraction energy, I block manifestation. Exactly. So I'm unwilling to receive even more abundance, more love, more joy, everything if I have a resistance energy to something. So I was like, interesting. What's my story around scarcity? What do I get to heal and love? And I realized that I judged myself for back when I was in scarcity, that must have meant I wasn't at a point where I trusted myself. I loved myself completely. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Let me evaluate this story. And I was like, was I actually in scarcity? Because even at the time when maybe there was less in my bank account, I was like so still fully supported. Like always had food to eat, always had a roof over my head, always had, friends in my life, my family that love me. So it's like, we can look around at whatever stage we're at and go, how is there abundance everywhere? You can walk outside and go, holy fuck. There's abundance everywhere. There's trees and plants and the sun is coming up and down every day and it never struggles to shine and the birds aren't struggling to fly and the grass grows every day. Nature shows us that creation happens effortlessly.
Exactly.
There's no separation to it. And so really I was like, this is when I came to realize scarcity is a complete lie. Scarcity is just a story. I was never scarce at all. I always was fully supported. It didn't matter. So it's like my life, I was taken care of. It was everywhere. So at any point we can go, all right. So I have this client right now in one of my best life tribes that she's like calling in so many $100,000 clients. And she was like, I'm calling in these people and I'm aligning to feeling worth. And I said, okay, so what you get to do is you just get to focus on moment by moment, feeling awesome. Feeling like looking outside and seeing how you're so fulfilled and you're so taken care of and you're so filled with joy and like love is everywhere and you're so blessed and like you have food always available. You have a roof over your head. Like, because when you come from a place of lack, I don't have this client. I'm calling in these clients. That is the gap of manifestation. We're doing it from an energy of lack so we can never receive. When we do it from a place, like when people ask me, well, how did you get $1 million clients? I'm like, I just was fulfilled in my life. I felt completely worthy. I didn't need the $1 million client. I wasn't calling in the $1 million client for me to feel fulfilled.
Well,
I was already
you
fulfilled.
dived really deep into the actual emotion before it was present, and you allowed yourself to experience it without any limitation.
Right.
As if you're experiencing $1 million right now in every single moment, and that's then attracts it to you.
And so most people are like, well, how can I get an internal representation then? I'm fucked, right? because if you, again, this is why we're talking about, if they came from a place of scarcity and all they've ever experienced is scarcity, they have no internal representation to what it feels like to have enough, or what it feels like to be loved or not abused or any of these things, right? And so it's like, it always has to start with giving it to yourself, because you can't come from outside. So even from yourself, when you can go, okay, wait, wow, look at like how my body works for me. Like I'm breathing, I always have enough air. I'm so grateful my legs work every day and can take me wherever I need to go. I remember having a car that was so shitty and scary. I wasn't sure it was going to make it from A to B. And it was like not the safest thing.
By the way. Having a shitty car is actually fun. I went from having a $90,000 car down to a $4,000 car.
Yeah.
That was the best thing I ever did, because I learned to experience gratitude for that.
Yeah, simplicity.
Which was the greatest lesson
it's like
I learned from
the journey goes like, I mean, I had the $1 million empire with the mansion that let go. Everything was like, then I'm like off grid, like washing my clothes in the sink and hang drying them.
Yeah.
So many places. It's like simplicity codes. You go from like, to like not requiring anything.
But that's also part of the journey though, because what I realized is as I had the money, I didn't lose the money. I didn't go down.
Yeah.
What I realized I needed to cultivate more humility within myself was to not have.
That's what I mean.
From when I was 17, I had, $200,000 from the time I was 17 a year. So it was like, how do I then reverse that so then I get the experience of humility and appreciation for that experience that I got to have for that many years. Yeah. And that's when I sort of went, okay, we'll let go of that. I don't need that anymore. Yeah. What I'll do is I'll settle with this. And when I say settle, I don't mean settle as in like, oh, fuck, I'm settling. It's like, I can allow myself to experience the same level of gratitude with this, and turn into a game. I think one thing I want to speak to based on what you've been saying is like, sometimes I think people hear that being grateful for the grass, for the trees, for waking up, for seeing the ocean, for taking this next breath. There's a rejection within them because it's too simple, and humanity wants to make things overcomplicated. But the reality of it is that's the frequency. So for the longer periods of time, you can embody the frequency of abundance and gratitude, and that embodiment of that feeling moving forward. Yeah. That's how you start to then attract that level, that experience. Yeah. And I think that the gap is when we're always trying to make it, but it has to be this, I have to do that before I experience it. And it's like, no, you don't have to. What you get to do is you get to practice for now and start really, really making your focus is your frequency, always your frequency. Because if
peace is my absolute priority.
A good example
my frequency.
Is if you're doing a manifestation meditation, you're calling in $10,000 as an example, or $20,000, and you spend 25 minutes a day doing that. But for the rest of the day, you're spending it complaining, in story, in victim, and all the rest of the BS, then 25 minutes as opposed to 23 hours and 35 minutes is not going to make a difference. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's about how do I embody that every single day moving through, and that the experience and the meditation or the activation, whatever you experience, is like the deep embodied remembrance. Yeah.
And so you can then
take that feeling.
How do I be in that frequency? How do I return to that frequency? How do I operate from that frequency moment by moment?
Yeah. And that also speaks to as well, like ritual. Like, I mean, I go through periods where I like meditate for like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day. But I don't go through periods where I meditate for like 10 minutes because what happens is the deeper you go into the practice of anything, you then begin to realize what that feels like in the body, and you get there faster. Yeah. And then bringing the reason why you have a solid practice is to advance yourself, to understand and experience that feeling, to then embody that moving forward, so then you can live in a meditative state for prolonged periods of time because you've taught yourself what that feels like.
Yeah, well, and when your practice is only meditation, people don't know how to, this is why I don't let people do medicine or anything unless they know how to integrate in their lives. So it's like
I totally agree
practicing
with that so deeply.
And there's something else that you said too, where it was like with manifestation is, so when you bring it back to, you're like, I am grateful for, because let's say someone has literally like their life is shit and everywhere they look it's shit. It's like, well, what I can do is go, what is working? And when I do what's working and what can I be grateful for? I can be grateful that my body, I have legs that walk and that I can breathe, and that this, and starting from being that simple thing is, the universe doesn't know the difference between the big and the small, right? And that's why it's like, if you're giving an appreciation is the key to abundance. Appreciation is actually the energy of abundance. So, and there's a difference between gratitude and appreciation. Gratitude is, and you know this. So it's like gratitude is like, you can say I'm grateful for something, but there's a separation. Appreciation is like, I'm so appreciating you in my life. It's like I'm giving you an energy. So when we appreciate, our body, when we appreciate whatever it is, we're giving out appreciation. And what you give, you receive back. So the moment you're in giving of this love energy and this fulfillment energy and this like honoring energy that I have something, I'm appreciating this thing, you effortlessly receive back. So when we say it is that simple, it really is like, okay, so like this person that, even when, I called in like, the time frame that I call in things, even that people think are huge, is like always less than 30 days. Like it's so fast, $1 million clients, etc. And that's why I'm like, it's not about, okay, I've got to have the number, and all those things actually can separate us because we go, okay, it's got to look this way. I've got to have that. And like you said, they're like, when I have that, then I think I can do it. What's really happening, so we all get clear, is we're being bitches to circumstance. We're saying, I bring it down really real, right, Jared? It's just what I do. Right. It's like spiritual and gangster, because sacred is sexy as fuck. So it's like when we have this, what was I saying? Oh my God.
It's coming in too fast.
There's so many things coming in.
Let's backtrack. Sacred is sexy.
What was right before that?
Bitches to
circumstance. Okay, thank you. Bitches to circumstance. I knew the words would bring it back in.
I can't keep up.
Abby's like, you guys are just channeling super fast. So it's like, you touched on something. You said, they think I have to have this in my experience for me to then know what it feels like. And this is why I was bringing it back to people going, well, if I've never experienced that, am I just screwed? How do I make that gap and that next step? Because the thing is, how society has taught us to create is have, do, be, right? Right. Yes. So it's like when I have the circumstance, when I call in that client that's paying me $100,000, or when I have, this in my life, when I have love in my life, then, or when I shed the weight, whatever it is, all things apply. Then I'll do that thing. Then I can go travel. Then I can spend more time with my family. Then I can start my business. Then I can Then I can go to the beach.
Finally be worthy.
Then I'll have happiness. Then I'll have joy. Then I'll have love, etc.
Yeah.
And that is not how manifestation works. Vibration matches vibration. So everything in your reality is an energetic vibrational match. That is it. That is fucking it. Energy never lies. Results don't lie. So whatever you have in your life is what you're unconsciously committed to. That is what you're vibrationally matching.
Now you sound like me.
Right. We always sound like we got all sorts of stuff that we share. So it's like when we realize then that if I go, well, I have to wait for the circumstance, you're never going to get it. The circumstance will never show up based on the vibration that you're not being. So you get to shift it to, I get to be this vibration now. If I am going to be this vibration of abundance, and say someone like literally is barely struggling to get by, and it doesn't matter if you're wanting to call in millions of dollars or just, my first was like, I just want to pay the bills and feed my babies when I was a $2 an hour waitress. And I was like, all right, like, so it's like starting from that point, it's like noticing, how do I get to trust that I have that and look for that? That's why it's like, oh, I'm so grateful that, our car always gets us from where we get to go. And I wasn't focusing on the car being shitty or unsafe. I was like, to my boys, I was like, oh, our car's the best. I'm so glad our car is always safe and gets us where we get to go. And we were giving appreciation to the car that we had.
Exactly.
And we were giving appreciation to having food on the table and giving appreciation. It was like, and I shifted it to excitement of, how could I create this? And what would that look like? That is the energy of creation.
And see, that's the biggest shift that people get to realize.
Yeah.
In everything you do, even if it's self-development work, even if it's just overcoming something like PTSD or anxiety, whatever it might be, it's that energy of, and now it's dropped out of my head as well. Give me a second. You just said something as well that triggered something, right?
Uh-huh.
We'll have to come back to it. Yeah, no, it's completely.
There's so many things coming through. We're tracking. We're aliens.
Because you're triggering things within me that are happening so fast, and I'm just like catching it and going, oh shit, and then it's moving.
Yeah. There's so many things because we can go so many directions. I was telling him how last night I was in ceremony. I literally was speaking 3 different alien languages.
Yeah. And
it was funny because I was talking to my friend who she's just as alien as fuck as I am. And we were talking about being in Australia and my event and how I was like, there's like one part, some guy there was like, oh yeah, I saw Marcy speak. And I was just like deer in headlights. And I'm like, yeah, I experienced that. One part of me is tracking, like, I'm like, all this stuff is channeling through and I'm like, da, 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 da. The next part of me is like tracking all their guides and all their energy movement, everything happening in the system. Third part is tracking my human self. And it's like, seeing what's happening. And then there's always this internal representation of seeing the crowd and how they're all just like deer in headlights. So it's like we're tracking so many things and we actually hold so many things in the field. So you're like, I say 5 things and you got, this. And then it's just beautiful.
It's all intertwined. It's all perfect. And it's always what it needs to be. And that's why we get to always celebrate. Like, I mean, Because one thing that someone can do is when they've forgotten something, they can get all really fed up about it or like really annoyed at themselves. But the reality of it is everything that's always said is perfect.
Yeah.
You know, so no matter how you show up, even if you're on stage and you trip over, it's actually perfect because you may have made them laugh, which they may have needed that experience for them to loosen up.
Yeah.
And then that also opens a space for you to just be really real.
You want to go into that?
There's a level of, of course. There's a level of ownership that I believe is sexy as well.
Yeah.
Because it's not about being perfect. What I've realized, like my old identity was
so unapologetic expression of who you really are is the sexiest fuck thing ever.
My old identity, and it's still something I'm working through, is Mr. Perfect, always saying the right thing at the right time, having the right advice. Right. And what I love about the more I dive into the experience of this business and coaching, whatever else we do, is you can never say the right thing at the right time. That doesn't exist. It's about just holding that space and just being open and letting whatever needs to come in. Same with workshops, everything that you facilitate. It's like if you've got a structured plan, it's great to have that. And also it's good to just create space for you to just flow.
Yeah.
Because what will need to come through will come through. And on an energetic level, because as an example, if you're trying to sit there, if you're trying to, this is a concept I've sat with because friends of mine that do a lot of talks say you should plan the whole thing, all that kind of stuff. And others are like, just jump on, drop in, like that source guide you. Yeah. And what I love is the fact where when you've created that much open space, what you share on that day is the frequency of what's actually in the room, what's actually present. Actually what's present in the moment. Because you can, if you're standing on a stage, if you're presenting something to somebody, if you're running a workshop, whatever it might be, and it's like your first time, you also get to allow yourself to trust and go, okay, so there's 6 people here. Right. Breathe into that. Yeah. Their eyes tell you so much. Yeah. The energy of the room tells you so much. And being able to be and surrender to that experience, I find gives you so much richness. And like for me, I would say I've self-taught myself to channel, and that's through jumping on Facebook Lives without a plan. Right. Like legitimately, like I haven't done any like official channeling training.
And all these capabilities came through you because you allowed that.
Yeah, and by no means I'm not a professional channel or anything, but what I'm saying is that is the ability to continue to cultivate the trust within yourself that you'll have what you need when you show up. Right. Even if that means you're jumping on, you're talking, and for 30 seconds you're blank and you're like, we've done it 3 times today. Yeah. And full self-ownership over it. That's the thing. You know?
And I love that you brought this in because this is actually a level of worthiness codes. Exactly. This is how you bring it to, you know, and I could share some stories where it's like, through my own experience of that, where it's like, and even what I did in Australia. I mean, I show up each time and I'm like, I have no agenda, no attachments, no expectations. I'm just here. And I know because how creation happens is moment by moment. And so when our human self is trying to plan ahead, and it's not to say that anybody can't plan ahead, and there's different stages to this, but when our human self wants to plan it, it's our scared little self that wants to control it. I'm afraid I'm not going to know what to do. I'm afraid of what people are going to think. I'm afraid I'm going to be rejected. I'm afraid I'm going to fail. Coming from that energy, we're like, okay, so I got to figure this out with my brain again, which is the mental context of logic, which is such a tiny part of how we operate, instead of all of our multidimensional capabilities being able to come online. So I'll share and remind me, Abby. Abby's in charge of what we get to go back to. Creation happening moment by moment, okay? So when I started speaking on stage, I remember like as I got called to realizing that a part of it was like I got to just be an open vessel. And I mean, I'll drop back actually first into it being that it's okay to show up however you're showing up. So I remember one of the first times, I've shared this story before, but it's such a good one, where I was a nutrition fitness mindset expert on ABC4 TV. And we were doing this show and they came to see me at the gym and we were doing like back exercises. And the anchor person, right, was like, we're here with Marcy Locke and we're bringing sexy back. And the moment she said sexy back, what happened in my brain was like, I'm bringing sexy back. And I instantly did it on live TV. I was like, I'm bringing sexy back. And she was like she was shocked and didn't know what to do. And my brain went, did I just fucking do that on national television? And then I was like, yep, I did, because I was practicing like loving myself wholly. I was practicing going, however I show up is perfect. And so I was like, yep, I did. If I'm not going to love and accept me as being all of me, who else is? Because again, it comes back to, it starts with us. Yeah. I can't create an environment where I feel whole and accepted by others until I am accepting and whole of myself. So there was that, like, there's those moments where we to go, that's right. What is the law or the principle here that I'm embodying, which is I love and accept myself however I show up. And so it's like, and then and I think that's honestly why I took off to be more of a success is because people realized I was not hiding anything. It was like the more I embodied transparency. And I think the reason that even as that showed up, that time frame, is there was a time that I really got called to. I was like, okay, I just get to go up on stage and be a vessel, because I realized creation happens moment by moment and that I could never plan out what's best for the crowd. I literally get to be there, and like I could have some drop in some visions being like, oh yeah, I feel like this is, going to show up, but we'll just see.
I think I want to add to that as well. What I find is really, really effective is having a really great intention.
Yeah, you can have an intention.
Have a really great intention.
Yet you're not attached to it.
Exactly.
There's no expectation.
And letting it be what it needs to be. Yeah. And one thing I want to share as well, because what you're speaking to again is permission.
Yeah.
So by you being on national television to potentially millions of people.
Yeah.
And just owning that, and even the TV presenter or the anchors, that's like, what the fuck is she doing?
It's like, and let's just get into back exercises.
There's that moment where there's going to be a lot of the people that watch it go, what a legend. And that like gives them permission in that moment. And what I want to speak to is actually just last night we had a workshop. Is at a person's house, place that we're staying at the moment in San Diego. And the person I want to speak about is actually the person that owns the house that organized the workshop. And I won't go into too much detail, but she had a very powerful cathartic release in the breath session. Like it was huge. It was like really, really heavy energetically, and all kinds of noises and screams and cries and laughs and like the plethora of the human emotions came out. And what happened is we sat there and everyone was sort of sitting there. They're just like, none of them had done breathwork before ever.
Yeah,
and they're just sitting there just like, what just happened to us? I'm like, welcome home.
Right. Life force energy just entered your body.
And what happened is she then came up the front. I said, does anyone want to share? She stands up. She gets up the front. There's a little altar in her TV room.
Yeah.
She gets up the front and she sits there hugging Abby, and she's like, she's in tears, in the fullest, most authentic, raw emotion. It's kind of like that moment of like breaking through in tears, but in her power at the same time. And she's like, I realized my purpose on this planet, and it's here. I am here to give you permission to fully express yourself. And the intensity she said it with and the vibration she was holding while she said it, everyone, including me, in tears. The whole room in tears.
Wow.
And she's like, I am here. My purpose is to give you permission I'm not here to protect you. I'm here to give you permission to be your authentic self.
Yeah.
We don't need to be protected from our emotions. We get to be authentic in ourselves.
Right.
And that's also your purpose as well.
Yeah.
You're here to give your brothers and sisters permission. She said all that, and I'm just like, yo, do you want to facilitate next time? I'm like, but that's the power of doing practice.
And that fast though too, you know, and that's the thing though, when we become present where we allow, see the thing is whenever we're guarding or blocking, like I said, we're trying to control things, control is controlling us.
Exactly.
So whenever there's resistance there, and one of the experiences that really allowed me to embody that is as I recognize, okay, you know what? You have to give yourself permission to step into that space that feels scary. You thought it was scary based on all of our stories, right? And I remember going, okay, I'm going to be an open vessel when I go on stage. And so I was like, remember, like I'd walk on stage, and usually as I'm getting on, like I start to drop in some downloads, and it's just like guided moment by moment, and all of a sudden it just goes where it's meant to go. But I'd seen and experienced that from that, it was always way beyond what I could have ever created if I tried to control it, or I tried to have a structure, or had my human brain doing it, right? Exactly. And yet it also opened up like these things to come through me. And one of the greatest experiences I remember having was there was this time, and I think it was like the first time I was speaking to this huge crowd. It was like 500 plus people, and, you know, really big from what I had done. And I'm walking up on stage, and like nothing is coming through, like nothing. And I'm like, okay. And I get up on stage, and I was just like, felt really soft, where normally I start channeling, I'm like, do. And it was like, I just felt really soft. And it was just like, sit down. That's all I heard. I was like, can I have a chair? And they're like, okay, we'll get her a chair. And like, I sit down, and the crowd's like, nothing is coming through. And for me, that was a huge level of permission to just be with whatever was there, like even the uncomfortableness. And so I say it's about getting comfortable in the discomfort, because we've labeled things and put meaning on things and stories on things. So we're like, oh, it's got to look like this. And so then it feels uncomfortable if it's not. Well, what if those stories didn't exist and we're actually comfortable with all things? We're free to be fully all things. There's infinite possibilities to all things. And from the place of what we thought was there was nothingness is where infinity exists. Like it's like womb consciousness from the darkness, all things that from the nothingness, infinity exists. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm just like, I'm sitting there, and nothing is coming through. And I just felt this like, okay, I'm just going to be with this. And I'm like, the crowd's like getting a little anxious. Like I'm just sitting there on stage, not saying a word. But
see, as I'm tuning into that, can be perceived so many ways, and their minds would be telling them so many things and bringing forth judgment of
this is what was beautiful.
I'm just thinking about if I was in that situation, I was in that experience, how you could literally, I'll let you finish the story in a second, but I just want to speak to what's there, is this standing up after 5 minutes of silence, when they've got this expectation for you to come on and say, I'm Marcy Locke, and play some crazy music and all the rest of the routine.
Right.
But that then creates space for something different.
Yeah.
A different experience, which is what humanity needs more than anything. The amount of people that come to workshops or to speaking gigs that I've seen so many, but you bringing forth a different experience that opens their mind up.
Yeah.
Because then what happens if 20 minutes later you're dropping just one divine nugget that is so potent that shifts them completely?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of a sudden they've walked away and their perception has now changed of how things are supposed to be when someone does a 90-minute keynote speech or whatever it is.
Well,
do you know what I mean? So it's created the space for that.
Yeah, and this is the thing though. It's what I want to bring attention to is, are you willing to give yourself permission to walk through that place of discomfort? Because everything you're looking for is going to be the reflection of what you've been afraid of or what you've believed. And so it's like, as I'm sitting there, I'm noticing the crowd is getting anxious and they're like, is she going to talk? They're starting to be like, oh, poor girl. Like, I'm just sitting there. And then suddenly it's like, I hear, tell them who you are. And I was like, can I tell you guys who I am? And of course they're like, yeah, like, will you please talk? And what dropped in was at some point I had created this, like, I'm Marcy Locke, the da-da-da-da, and like this whole little thing about like embodying the being that I was remembering and like who I really stood for. I had done it at one point daily, but I hadn't done it for a while. And so it was like, tell them that. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I start speaking this and it's really choppy and bad because it's been a while since I've said it. It's like I get halfway through it and I'm starting to like, and I mean, so then the whole crowd's like, oh, like you can feel the energy and the tensity in the room of like, she is bombing on stage. And I like barely get through it. And all of a sudden I just felt this peace overcome me. And it was like, oh my God. Like, and I got this instant download. It was like, I'm like, you know what was perfect about that? And the whole crowd is like, what? And I was like, it was perfectly imperfect. And this whole download came through me where I started to understand. And this is where I teach this now, but it came through in this moment on stage because I allowed the space for it. Where it came through, where it's like, you know how we say that it's not about perfection, it's about progression. I call bullshit. It's actually you're perfect in every fucking moment. There is no story other than your perfection in this moment. So in this moment, if I'm bombing on stage, I'm doing it perfectly. If I'm a bitch mom, I'm doing it perfectly. If I'm triggered, I'm doing it perfectly. If I'm in my shit, I'm doing it perfectly. Like all of it, because we're human.
And also with that as well, having the awareness and also the language and the questions to move you through that experience.
Right.
Because it's very easy to then go into like contraction after having that experience.
Yeah.
And making that mean something about who you are. But then being able to effectively ask yourself questions to bring out the actual truth and go, okay, why was that for my growth? As an example for that, like for that experience, if the ego or the little girl inside would say, you fucked up, as opposed to, what did I just learn?
Yeah.
That could be like,
and I could have just totally bombed on the stage and been like, well, that was, again, then people go, oh, I'll never speak again. And we go, ooh, interesting. Okay. Like, so what are my thoughts or my stories? And there's plenty of that too. I remember the first time I was on TV, like they had, you know, how like people do Facebook page for the TV and people like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. Da, 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 da. But then someone was like, how much is one of her programs? And based on how much my program was, they're like, she's manipulative and a liar. And I was like, this person doesn't even know me, you know? And I was like, they don't know how important it is to me to have like integrity. And so it's like, no matter what, you have these experiences that make you call forth to be like, and can I know and understand that I'm just a reflection for that person of what inside them they get to heal and love. If they're not worth what they were like, that's like a mortgage payment. Or a car payment. At the time, I mean, so much less money than what I charge now. I was like, obviously that person didn't see themselves as value enough to be worth a mortgage payment or a car payment. It's a reflection of their story. Right.
And something that you speak about a lot, which I really, really love, is that when someone makes an investment, especially if it's a more expensive one, say it's like 15, 20 grand, 30 grand for a retreat, that sounds like a lot of money.
Yeah.
But the first step, the initial point of actually investing that money is you actually valuing yourself. That's changing your money story.
So much.
That evolves your money story. Like, I mean, we've been investing more than ever before, and our money story is just like, all of a sudden, what was a lot of money is now like,
oh, easy.
It's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
It isn't a lot of money. And also, because you've been in the experience of manifesting in a period of time, the universe works behind you. Like, it's just like, you invested 40, we'll give you 80. And it just does that every time.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And the funny thing is people don't believe it until they actually go, let's make it happen. Let's see how this goes. And honestly, the amount of times that unfolds, people like pay a deposit, all of a sudden the rest of the money manifests in 2 days.
I always say, because it's the law of parallel returns. Whatever you put energy into, it returns back, you know? And when you're trusting, and see, this is the thing, when you're trusting and moving forward, when you're allowing, like you're in the energy of like, you know what, I'm here to serve, I'm here to like create, I'm here to be this person, then it all like the support comes in to allow you to do that. Because what I experienced with that, where I was on stage and it just like this thing dropped in, I start channeling this whole thing about, you know, being perfection in this moment and really seeing us out of our divinity, that there's no way you can ever.
The same occasion.
Yeah. So there's like, so it wasn't that I just bombed on stage.
That's amazing.
What came through in that moment then was like, I was like, why was this perfect? And everyone's like, yeah, like, why was that perfect? Because it looked like shit. And then I start channeling this whole understanding that because we are actually perfect in each moment, everything we're doing is perfect. Because as divine beings, if I'm even to speak anything other than my divinity, I'm actually out of embodiment of my divinity. I'm not in integrity with the divine being that I am. So it's like to think that if we're all emotions and we're all things, we're all traits, we're every single one cell of our being is the same as the universe, which means I'm manipulation, I'm honesty, I'm abuse, I'm an abuser, I've been abused. It's like I'm all things, right? So if we aren't to become at peace with being all things and have a story about, again, okay, well, you'll love me when I'm good, but not when I'm bad. It's an exchange and we'll have love if you act this way or show up for me. That's just the conditional bullshit that we've been raised in.
Exactly.
Where the truth is that we get to operate from unconditional love, and that starts with ourselves. And as you brought up in before, being like practicing on not being perfect, that was huge for me, as well as like letting go of like me being called to stand as an unapologetic expression and liberation, right? It's like I got called to that. But what happened was by sharing that new context of understanding, which came through me in that time, literally it was a standing ovation. I was like the only standing ovation of the entire experience. And that embodied me. It was like, there's no way I ever can do anything but trust the moment by moment with the divine. And as we bring it full circle, even into like what I experienced in Australia, you know, I shared a bit with you guys how it's like, I just get into the space and we just start to go where the energy takes us. So you follow the energy to receive. The energy and the flow is always where the greatest alignment is. When we go against the flow, we create dis-ease, which is against ease, right? And so from that experience to have, like, just like you did with your breath work, it's like to have people have like, literally one lady being like, I'm healed, and people having like the most, what came through me was the next level of activation codes. I ended up channeling this whole thing around like an inner child connection healing that then timeline hopped us to erasing and shifting in Australia, and then brought it back to a connection with your highest self. And everyone came out of that and they were vibrating. It's almost like that we created a source code, a remembrance in their system of their source code. And that's why I say it's like we activate that DNA within us, and now they have those codes and they're like, oh my gosh. So one of your peeps that was there, Brad, had said that he hadn't swum in the ocean for 40 plus years because he was afraid of it. And the very next day he went and jumped in the ocean and played like a child and was totally over it. And it was like, you know, that's how fast. And I think that's where we started going. And then we went off on all these other directions.
And also as well, there was something you were showing in connection with embodiment, because with the stories that we've all had and the little boy and little girl within all of us that's created, that's our subconscious mind that holds us and limits us and that always throws a tantrum and holds us where we are essentially in this now moment. Yeah. What we get to be as leaders, as all of us, every single person, every person we work with, connect with, and we facilitate with, is we get to be the example and the embodiment of something different. Yeah. The exception. Because we've settled as a human race for so long, and as aliens as well, by the way, but mainly humans.
Most of them don't know they're aliens yet, but someday soon you will.
I'll know when I meet you if you're an alien. We can tell. Abby is definitely an alien. But what's happened is because of the way that, and this comes from our parents.
She's a sexy alien, by the way.
But this isn't even the fault of our parents or even their parents' fault. Yeah. This is how society has conditioned us. What we get to be as leaders moving forward is the example of something different. So if we choose to go, okay, cool, this is what I could have settled for in the past, and now that this same breakdown is unfolding right now, but I'm choosing this, that's what leadership truly is. It's in that. And you
lead by, I always say leaders go first.
You lead by leading yourself.
You lead by example, by going first. You have to give it to yourself first. And that's why it's like, as a coach way back in the past, I remember, and we were talking about how fast things can happen, right? 2 of my past personal clients came to my event, and the one I got to spend time with, and she's like, I'm living my dream life. It's because of you. And I'm like, no, sweetie. I was like, it's all you, baby cakes. I was like, I just got to be a beautiful contract to witness and guide you, and you chose to implement it. And then I saw another personal client who he had like he totally wanted to catapult his business and all these things, had a massive catapult of his business, everything. And yet he was in such a different place because of his level of leaning in and allowance. And so it's like, it truly becomes, I recognized as a coach years ago that if people didn't get these, intense, amazing results, and yet I'd have people that would get massive, intense, amazing results. Everyone got results, but it was like, why the different variation? Yeah. And I was like, I can't save anyone. I dropped the story that it was up to me to save anyone.
And that's the heaviest story that we carry as coaches. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's your responsibility to save them.
Yeah, or that like you failed. And it's like, no, if you, and this is what, from the get-go, when we operate in full authenticity, integrity, I tell people from the get-go, like, I'm not here to save you. It's all up to you. Like everything here is dependent on how much you lean in and you choose and you implement and integrate what you're doing. I'm just here as a guide of what has worked for me. And I share these tools with you, but you get to integrate it. And so until we're all willing to take radical responsibility for ourselves of like everything in our world is a reflection of what's happening for us. So even to think like, oh, I'm going to get a coach and they're going to get me there.
That's the answer.
Bullshit, right?
It's not the answer.
Yeah. It's not. And this is why I'm very picky about who gets into my space and who I work with, because it was like, if you're not, and working with people at a high level, we could see it as, it's interesting because having like my first $1 million client, he had a 5 million ROI within 5 weeks. And it was because it was such a big investment and he implemented everything that I said. And then it was interesting to be where I did these service events and offered it for $108 and how less people showed up, because it was such a minimal investment. And that's why I'm like, this is why I work with people that they're like highly committed.
Exactly.
It's like they're going to, when I was a $2 an hour waitress, my first coach was $15,000 and I had $10 to my name. And it was like, do you think I did everything that I was taught? Yeah. Because I was like, I was so invested in myself. Right.
100%.
Yeah.
It's always a reflection.
Yeah. What do you think, Abby? Did we miss anything there?
You got a question you want to throw into this?
Well, you want to talk about time, or have you kind of covered that?
Well, let's frame that a bit, because it is to notice. Here we've been doing immersion experiences. I have like my retreat next week. You've got yours coming up in Bali. Is yours next week too?
It's the 15th, so that's
mine's the 11th through the 16th. So yeah, like super close. Like
you can do both if you wanted to.
Right.
Jump on a plane the 16th.
Yeah.
I think let's speak to what our experience of immersion is, because I was saying to you in this bedroom over here before we jumped on. It's like I'm not feeling like I want to be coached right now. I feel like I want an immersion experience. I've been coached so much and had those containers of accountability so often that I think for me, like what I'm wanting is like immersion experiences. And a good example of that is if I want to do like another certification, breath work, or sound healing, whatever it is. I'm kind of not interested in doing a 12-month course. Yeah. What I'm more called to doing is like a 12-day immersion where I'm like fully immersed, because you're in this environment where my only focus is
my
this.
brain is like, oh my God, yes.
Yeah, yes. My only focus is this. And because in 12 days, you can cover more than you can in 12 months if you're doing it in a really intentional way. When you've still got the kids to worry about, or this to pay and this to do and this to do at the same time.
Let's talk medicine. I mean, most people... Medicine, sacred sacrament... The only way that I have ever done it, and I've taken my peeps. I take my peeps all over the world, and I've done DNA activation in Europe. I've done cellular cleansing and portal working. I've done ayahuasca deep in the jungles. I've done, the pathways to India. Here, obviously, next week, we have 6 full-on days of doing deep dive medicine work. And so it's like, I have never experienced where people will just go do a day or a mini experience. I feel like that's like one little pee-pee touch. You just got tickled. Did you like that? I was waiting for you to get it. Sorry, I just gave you a little tickle, one little pee-pee touch, right?
But that's
all in there.
Yes. But that's the thing, though. Like the experience of embodiment you're going to have afterwards is directly correlated to the level into which you have deep dive.
Yeah. See, so for me, when I've taken my peeps, we do literally 5-6 ceremonies over a week's time. It's like you come out of there and you've done 20 plus years of clearing work on how we do it on the typical surface self-empowerment way of like, let's process this and see this. It's like, and again, all that is mental, all that is logical. It's not even like the base of your system, which is all emotional body. It's feeling center. It's the cells. Your cells are vibrating 500% stronger than a thought in your brain. So when you sit and like think the thought, but then you look at all the evidence how you did that. Okay, well, let me like choose a different thought. Like it's all like, compared to deeply embodying, clearing your cells and then deeply embodying in the core of your being this internal representation of source code remembrance. Because as you cleanse those lines, and all of a sudden there's no separation between you and the cosmos and your highest self and your oversoul and all those things. It's like, whoa, now I know what home base feels like. Now 100%. I know what that feels like. And now, so then I go into my life and I go, ooh, this doesn't feel good. How do I move through that emotionally to integrate back to this?
100%.
And I create that home base.
There's a synergy as well. I think there's, to a degree, like accountability is a really effective thing, and having a coach to support you through things. I think that it goes through phases, because what I found what was for me was having the bridge of having someone to hold space for me, to get me to the place where I built more trust and understood more about spiritual language and all the things. And I started to dance with the ideas of what is plant medicine, why would I do it? And, you know, you're speaking with someone that's done multiple ceremonies or as a shaman or whatever it may be. And that then becomes your bridge to what you may experience. And then it opens you up. It also gives you the language to be able to then, when you go to the retreat, you have all of the little tools you can use as you're coming out of it. And this is why it's good when you do teach the tools at the retreat as well. But if you have been, you know, supported by a coach.
I mean, it's all of it.
It's all of it,
I think it's all gets to be there, because I mean, I don't take people to the jungles or let them come to my retreats unless they're in my programs and they know how to integrate.
That's exactly what we've done.
Because actually, it would be against what I know is true because otherwise you just go cleanse a bunch of shit and you go back into your life and you recreate the same shit. So I do believe there's space for all of it. But what we're talking about is like when someone chooses to go more fully in, like lean into themselves, invest in themselves, there is no such fucking thing as time. It can be like that. Like someone's like, oh my gosh, I'm healed and I'm experiencing life at such a different degree because they were now ready for that place where they got to go all in at a greater degree. But I do believe that, I mean, if you just send someone to a deep immersion, but they don't have the support of the tools integrated or the accountability. And, you know, it's like why we both have tribes. We both have communities and tribes where they're being supported with moving through the stuff that comes up. Because otherwise, you know, 99% of people actually fail at getting what less than 3% achieve their goals. 99% never even get what they want. It's like 98% stop after 2 to 3 tries because their environment. Because their environment
of course.
Is, again, so that's why I say if there's no internal representation, so no matter where you're at, it's like, how can you start to immerse yourself in an environment of something different? Whether you're watching Abby and Jared every day and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to practice that tool. Oh, I'm going to start to surround myself with those kind of people. And how do you immerse yourself in a different environment? And where I go that we went even in the last experience in Australia was your unconscious environment. Because it's not just the people you hang out with and what you're, like you said, I'll meditate for 30 minutes a day, but 23 hours a day, you're speaking shit to yourself and you're looking at it.
That's internal environment that you're speaking to.
Your unconscious internal environment every moment is what's anchoring in your past traumas, your beliefs, the story of who you believe you to be. Then you become addicted to the chemicals in your system of suffering, sacrifice, settle. So then the moment you actually experience someone being something else, you're like, oh, this doesn't, and we unconsciously, because we're unconsciously committed, sabotage that.
100%.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
Subconscious work is such a powerful thing to do. And I think that what's been really, really effective is bringing, I mean, obviously shadow work and like doing retreats and doing plant medicine is like the deepest way you can do shadow work. It's like, okay, let's look at everything right now. Yeah. Go deep into that and really, really go in there with a beautiful intention. Yeah. And I think that's the whole point. You know, shadow work, it sounds like a scary thing, but it's basically just looking at what's in the subconscious.
Our live video ended. Does that matter? I guess it only goes so long.
Maybe it's like an hour.
There you go. How long? Yeah. You're still here. We're still here. Has it been an hour?
What time is it? 1 o'clock? Oh, wow.
we knew we could just go for a really long time.
We didn't say 1 to 2 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll wrap it up in 10.
Yes.
Oh, 10?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So shadow work. I mean, shadow work is like being such a massive foundation, making peace with the things that have been present in my past and even past lives.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that, coming back to the conversation around time, it's like everything exists in the same, in the right now. So like all the journeys that I've had in, say, timeline therapy, past life regression, breath work, whatever it might be, plant medicine, where I'm seeing myself as an Egyptian prince and I'm seeing my wife get murdered in front of me, which is one of my really, really intense, which is the story that was linked to me experiencing depression in this lifetime, was unprocessed sadness in that old timeline. But it still exists in this timeline. I can tap into it. I can feel it.
Well, they're all actually happening right now.
Exactly. And I can actually meditate and tune into that.
If we really want to go there.
Yeah. It actually exists now.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we have access to it now, like in the subconscious mind. Like you can go through a process with Marcy, with myself, with any facilitator, and you can access that in this now moment.
This is why we can do timeline hopping and shift your reality right now if you're willing to actually embrace those codes and choose it from the moment that we create that shift in your timeline. Yeah, I mean, there's such multidimensional gifts that we have.
We might need to do a Facebook series.
Oh my God. Yeah, but there really is. And that's the beauty of it, is there is no such thing as time. I mean, I remember when they wanted to do a documentary of my life, because they were like, you went from a $2 an hour waitress, single mom, to a multimillionaire coaching people at $1 million level in 6 years. And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't really think about that. For me, it was like my experience of growth and expansion. And yet even going from like me having that experience in the jungle that said, this is what I now get to serve, like as I got called to serve people at that level, it was only about them serving at that level of investment. Because what I was called to was serving leaders in the world, that it would take that level of investment in themselves for them to step up and move through their shit. To be called to that level of what's moving, because, that's such a high level of investment. It was like, all right. Like, it wasn't I want to have $1 million clients. It was not a mental thing. It was a being called forth thing. That's why it was not I need $1 million client. It was like, all right. So then it was like, I got to align to that. And it was like, okay, this is what I'm being called to do. How do I call myself to that level of worthiness too? To be like, okay, I'm worthy to receive this, and I'm worthy because I know what's going to happen. So that's why I say there really is no such thing as time.
100%.
It doesn't exist at all.
Well, this is
you can choose your healing right now.
This is legitimately the truth, because the reality of it is what's said commonly. I know you've been in the work for a long time. I'm not speaking to you in this moment, but what commonly happens is people are in the work for a long time, for 20 or 30 years. And that then builds an identity around being in the work for so long. But they've also had the same shitty story.
I'm in a process.
That's same shitty story for 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
And that's why you'll get people that come in that have been in the work for 2 years, and they're in a deeper place of embodiment, and they're more potent, powerful leaders, because the fact that time doesn't exist, it doesn't actually matter how long you've been in the work. I've worked with people that in 3 months are more embodied than people that have been doing the work for 20 years. That's the actual reality of, if the goal is to embody liberation, love, compassion, and courage, if that's the vision and the journey, then it doesn't need to take 20 years. It doesn't need to be pain. It doesn't need to be, I did a ceremony, so I'm in my process for the next 6 months. It doesn't need to be, this happened to me, so I'm in my process for the next 3 years. It doesn't need to be that, because the reality of it is one thing for me is I've been always telling myself a different story. And everything that I've done, I just tell myself a different story. And it's amazing, because people are always going to tell you what you should believe. But then if you continue to repeat a different story, your experience is going to be completely different. And
you have to buy into their story of suffering. That's why some people can do it really quickly.
You get to meet it with love. I mean, our business is a great example of that. Like with Quantum Leap, and we're just like, we've been operating for 10 months, and we're like, look where we are.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And that's the reality. And what that comes down to, it goes back to the original thought of, it's just full trust. The only reason we're able to create what we've created in the 10, 11 months that it's been for Limitless Level Leadership is the level of trust we're putting in. We're letting divine work through us. We haven't got a strategy or a plan. We've never written a business plan, even once. We put down paper, we brain dump things, and we're like, okay, we organize, okay, cool, that looks cool.
You have an intention of where you want to go and what you want to serve, and yet you're just led and guided through the direction
elements of the masculine energy that's really effective. Focus, intention, and presence. And just being like, okay, this is what we want to create, and we focus and we hone on that one thing, and it's okay, cool. That's the masculine energy. It's not the, we got to plan 6 months ahead, and we got to make this happen, and this, and then by this date, it's like, that's just BS. In the frequency of the planet today, that doesn't actually work. We actually have experimented with trying that, and it's just like, as soon as we do it, we break down. As soon as we've tried elements of that, break down. Break down.
Because it's against ease.
Exactly.
And this is the shift of what's actually coming forth, is the rise of the feminine and the understanding that this is how creation happens. This is why I said creation happens moment by moment. So when I first even started one of my first businesses, it was like, I literally was like, moment by moment, like, okay, we're starting this on Monday. Okay, what am I going to teach them? And, it's just what
that's literally the journey. That's the journey.
But that's what allowed me to be in tune with them and what was the most authentic. This is what they require. And that's the same thing getting on stage. It's like, how could I ever know what the group is requiring until I'm in their energy and I know, and I can have things drop in and have an intention, but no expectations. And I've had people ask me, will you come teach on manifesting money and wealth? And I'm like, I'll come as long as you know whatever the fuck comes through me is coming through me. I was like, as long as there's no like.
Did you get that gangster on a phone call? Like full profession, like.
Oh, totally. There was actually somebody was laughing that there's a time I got on a podcast. I shared this story because it was a teaching moment where I got on to do a podcast and just the word fuck came out. And the guy was like, oh, no. We got to start over. You can't swear on this show. And I'm like, thank you, my friend. I'm like, I don't think this is a fit. I was like, I'm not going to do your show then, because it would be out of authenticity. I'm fully unapologetically expressed. And that's what I teach people. And so, if I pretended to be something I'm not, on your show. People are just going to see who I am later.
Just in the thought of that,
yeah.
the thought of, I can't say that. It's like, it creates this like contraction instantly.
Right.
When you can drop in and relax and just let it flow through.
Yeah. And
it's a completely different experience.
Yeah. That was a whole lesson for me of like being raised Mormon, LDS, a really strict religious system. And even to choose to give myself permission. And then the first time on stage that wanted to come through and me being committed to being an open channel, I actually blocked it. And then I was like, oh, why did I do that? And I got to look at my stories. Well, if I say this word, then people are going to think I'm bad. I'm not spiritual. They won't hear my message, all this. And I was like, interesting. I'm afraid of being judged. My little girl's afraid that she'll be rejected and judged. And am I bigger than that to know that it doesn't, like, if a word controls you, if I say fuck and somebody goes, oh, I really don't like it when she says that. I used to do that too. And it's like, who's controlling you? The word is actually controlling you and your experience. And this is, again, why when we drop that there's any attachment to any experience outside of ourselves or circumstance, everything's a divine reflection. So
something you said, I want people to hear as well. It's choose to give yourself permission. I've been seeking out permission, like, almost every single day whenever I'm online. It's like permission. That is the key source for liberation. Yeah. It's in a world where you get told you have to do a certain amount of things to get love, to be accepted. And it has to look a certain way. Yeah. And as an adult, as a human being, as a sovereign being, you get to choose to give yourself permission every single moment. Yeah. As long as it's not bringing any harm to anybody else, then you are clear.
And that's what you just said you guys have just done. You just like, it's a trust thing, but the trust is permission. The trust is like, I trust my own seership. I command my own sovereignty. This is what feels good. This is where we're feeling called to go. And when you, even though this stuff is always going to come up for all of us to be like, ooh, that feels a little scary, to just, probably the first time you did Facebook Live and you just, thing. Now, I literally can't plan. I'm like, I start getting downloads. I'm like, record. Hi, guys. Blah, 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 blah.
I literally can't plan. So I'll actually...
it shuts me down to try to plan. Yeah. And so I just get to be an open channel. And so as you did that, though, the capabilities came more through you to feel like to listen and to hear and feel what was coming through. And yet in each moment, it's giving yourself permission to trust the sovereignty of who you are, to trust the process of life, to trust the universe, and know that is actually how we're divinely built and created. That is creation. Creation happens moment by moment. It doesn't happen like, I'm going to plan this all out. That's all a head fuck game. And what I see that people do is when they do that, then it's like, it's not working. And they're like, why is it not working? And it's because it's out of alignment. It's out of alignment from who they truly are. And so it is. It's such a beautiful divine embodiment of just moment by moment surrender. Just like this. We were like, I don't know, what are we going to talk about? I don't know, we'll just push record. And we'll just say.
Let's just see what unfolds. No plan, no structure, no nothing. Just, we pushed live 3 times. So.
Right? Live. And we're golden and good. So,
and it was perfect.
Yeah, in the temple of wholeness. And so, if anything, guys, it's, it's like you take what you can receive.
And I think one last thing I want to add to that as well is what we get to focus on. One thing, this actually comes from my dad. He he probably says it to me on average like once a month as a little reminder, and I'm glad that he does. It's not from a place of condescending. He's just like throwing me little nuggets always. He's like, focus on the one. Focus on the one.
Yeah, inch by inch, life is a cinch. Yard by yard, it's hard.
Yeah, if you're jumping on, if you're doing any type of facilitation, Facebook Lives, coaching, whatever it is, you focus on supporting the one person. Because if you jump on stage, if Marcy jumped on stage and did that one talk where she was in breakdown at the start of it or was like stopped and couldn't speak, and then all of a sudden, if all that she did was when she then had that massive download to speak about perfection, then spoke to the whole thing of like, wow, if one person stood up and had a standing ovation, that could have transformed their entire life. They could have saved their life. Yeah. Potentially even their family's life. And that person then experiencing that embodiment then goes to be a leader in their life. Yeah. So it's amazing when the 1,000, the 5,000, the 10,000, the 20,000 watch. That's amazing. It's great. But when it's what I've noticed and what's been a beautiful revealing from the universe is sometimes I'll do a video and my ego wants to say, oh, you only got a certain amount of views. Yeah. But then I'll get like 15 direct messages saying, that was exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you so much. I love you and whatever. Like, do you know what I mean? So it's just interesting how the mind wants to work, but then what our soul has for us is something completely different.
And when you see the mind, its job. So, I mean, of course, as we move through, we talked a little bit the other day about how ego is our best friend, like one of our best friends. And I'm just saying that like the mind is literally just framing it based out of your story. You get to know that all the time. It's only seeing it through the context of consciousness
I have to say, the fact that you've said that has graduated you to like bestie level. Ego's your best friend because everyone's always like, "Gotta kick your ego. What's the worst thing?"
I'm like, any energy that's resistance.
My ego.
Yeah, it's my partner. Yeah. So my point being that it's like when we have this, like obviously the fighting resistance with the ego. I swear I was going somewhere with that. Now I just lost it. What did you say before that? Remind me before I said
serving
ego
the
thing.
one.
Yeah. Okay. So what's beautiful, see, is that came up for me with Australia because I go from having retreats booked a year out in advance, anywhere from, 15 to 30,000 to go to one of my retreat experiences. Any one day type things with me were like $5,000. And I'm like, I'm called to serve at what? $108? Really? And it being like a small event where I'm like, yeah, I had people messaging me, are you serious? Are you kidding? I'm going to fly in from other countries because they'd never heard me do something so low. So the people who knew me and saw the value in it. And then everyone else is like, I don't know who the fuck this chick is. And I don't know, maybe I'm kind of busy on Saturday. Like,
yeah, exactly.
And I noticed how it triggered my value. And I was like, this is just all human stories. It's like, this is what I was called to do. This is how I know that I was called to serve. Meanwhile, the universe is taking care of me in all these ways. I had an investment drop in the beginning when I got there that was like, someone needed a last $20,000 for this thing. It was this beautiful project for creating free energy on the planet. 3 times return in 2 weeks. So my $20,000 turned into $60,000 just like that. Like that was like, sweet. Thank you, universe. And then meanwhile, I'm like getting offered all these gorgeous places to stay for free, which I've never done before. Yeah. It was like the universe just was like, we're serving and supporting you. Again, because I'm just in the energy of like, I wasn't doing it for any strategy or reason. I was doing it because that's what my soul was calling me forth to do. Meanwhile, of course, I picked up people who want VIPs and are going to come to my future retreats. It's just like, of course, that's going to happen.
Always happen.
And yet to know that to have some people say to me like, yeah, that transformed everything for me. That transformed my world. And I was like, I had soul contracts with these people and I'm here to activate the codes. They're activating the codes. And when you bring it back to the thing that you said about focusing on the one, it takes me back to like back in the day when I started my first, I did 90-day mind body transformations in gyms as I became like nutrition fitness expert on ABC4 and evolved then into the mindset and the feeling bodies and DNA activation and working with ascended masters. And I keep getting woo-woo more and more and more. Yeah, I remember the first group that I had, there was 10 people. And what came through me as we celebrated their graduation, I was like, we're starting a revolution of living in authenticity. My human brain said, bullshit, you've got 10 people in the room. And what I experienced though, there was this time I was in, and it was before I was on TV. So it was like, after being on TV, there was times my boys were like, Mom, people are following us again. Like we'd go in the grocery store and get people looking and like taking pictures or doing stuff. But it was before this. I had this one group going and there was this woman like following me through the store. And she finally comes up and she's like, I just have to say hi. She's like, my friend's friend is in your program. Mm-hmm. What she's taught my friend, my friends taught me, I've shared with my family. And she's like, my family has had a complete revolutionary shift of healing. Mm. And I'm just like, I was awestruck, like the one, what ended up happening at this graduation, because they all got to invite their friends and family. And that's how it rolled back then. This older couple, this looks like grandma, grandpa, comes up to me at the end and they hugged me and started crying. And I'm thinking they're like, family of one of my participants. And they were the grandparents of that chick. Mm. So they were the grandparents of the chick who her friend's friend was in my program. And they said, from what she, shared with us, our family came back together and reconnected and healed all these from like I would teach them how to have, conscious communication and seeing obviously what their beliefs were and their thoughts and how to break all that down. And I teach an easy 5 steps process to walk people through this. And I was just in tears and in awe that this whole family that I didn't even touch personally had this whole shift. And I was like, holy shit, we are creating a revolution.
That is, everyone has a question, why you do so much self-development? Mm-hmm. That's the why, right?
Yeah.
Because the stuff that you learn and embody and can then teach to others, because we're always like that as well. Like whatever you learn from us, share with somebody else. That is the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
Share breath work, share mindset tricks, share anything.
Right. It's all truth. It's all love.
Exactly. So that frequency, again, it also supports you in growing more yourself, because the more you teach somebody else, you get rewarded again, So it's just this beautiful cycle of growth and expansion.
And we'll bring this back with embodiment and codes, is that I get it all the time now that people from just the event, they're around me for a couple hours and they're like, I have never felt the frequency from someone of just this divine unconditional love, or like, you speak. And like yesterday, meeting a couple of people last time, they're like, you speak. And I'm like, what's this? What are you doing? And it's because, and we don't realize we are this vibration. We are this essence. We are this code. And that's why, people would pay a lot of money to just be in a VIP experience and have these codes, but you can also just from watching you. There's always a place to start.
Exactly.
You can pick up and realize
to each other.
Yeah, and see the possibility. And when you see the possibility exists, then you know that you can also create that. Exactly. So for every single person, wherever you're at, it's like, oh, now I can actually see what's possible, and I can start to embrace that and practice that. And then you pick up those codes, and then you become that frequency. And together in doing that, we all rise in love. And that is how we change.
Together we rise.
We rise in love. So, and I always say we rise in love. So it's like we literally this is how we are bringing in the new earth frequency codes, where what we'll shed is scarcity, disease, sickness, because all that comes from low vibrational frequency. All of us get to be, there's so much wealth and abundance in the world. Like, it's like, there's plenty for everyone to be taken care of. There's plenty of resources for everyone to be taken care of.
It exists already now.
It does right now.
It has for like 30 years.
Heaven is a state of consciousness. Heaven is on earth right now. So it's like, it's all available, but you're only seeing this life in this world where we're in lack and scarcity and separation because you're choosing that context of consciousness, and that's how you're operating.
This is a very triggering thing to say if someone's Christian. I grew up Christian myself, so no disrespect to anybody, but what I've realized through my own personal practice and the bits and pieces that I was reading throughout time was I realized that heaven and hell is a reflection, it's a metaphor. It's a reflection of what we create in our own life in the everyday moment.
Exactly.
Because see, what we're in the business, what we're co-creating always is heaven on earth. This is our vision for our future. The opposite to that is being in breakdown, being in depression, being in PTSD, being in jail, being somewhere that is essentially a man-made experience of hell. You know, so for me, not to say that anyone else's beliefs are wrong, but for me, my understanding of heaven and hell is a metaphor for what we create in our life and what the choices we make. Every single choice creates your experience of life, so if for every time someone said that, everyone actually took that one thing, that your choices create your experience.
You are the source of your own experience is what I would say.
Every single thing that you are experiencing, you've chosen either consciously or unconsciously, or your divine self chose that before you even came down to this planet.
We can go way back to go, oh, that's why it was all created for you, which would be a whole nother one.
We'll save it because we can go another 2 hours deeper, but I think we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we love you guys. Glad we hit record.
Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We love you so much.
Have so much fun. We'll talk soon. Thank you, my friends, for joining me for another amazing conversation to create change. To allow that change to take place, please integrate the tools so that you can really receive the change into your life. And I invite you to join us for even more in the Best Life Tribe and continue on your path and your journey. And remember who you really are, a divine being that is already whole, already worthy, completely deserving, and fully capable to now claim and live the life you love.